Good day to all of you. My task for today is to discuss the cell theory on how it exists, produced, and important to all living organisms. So let's begin. In my presentations, I will be able to discuss the following, which is the cell theory, history, key points, modern cell theory, parts of cell with function, types of cells and its function, sizes of cell, and the cell life cycle. Cell theory. Cell theory is the scientific theory that all organisms are made of the cells as the smallest functional unit. Cell theory states that livings are composed of one or more cells, and that the cell is the basic unit of life, and that cells arise from existing cells. When it comes to cells' death, blood cells in the body are destroyed at a rate of between 3 to 5 million every second. So, that is the reason by the late 1830s, botanist Matthias Liden and zoologist Theodor Swan were studying tissues and proposed the unified cell theory, which is referred to the spontaneous generations as the method for cell originations, and it is also called as abiogenesis. Do you have an idea about abiogenesis? So, abiogenesis is the original evolutions of life or living organisms from inorganic or inanimate substances. But later on, Rudolf Virchow made important contributions on this theory, and he famously stated that omnia cellula is cellula. That means all cells only arise from pre-existing cells. And for the key points, the cell theory described the basic properties of all cells. The three scientists that contributed to the development of cell theory are Matthias Litten, Theodor Swan, and Rudolf Virchow. A component of the cell theory is that all living things are composed of one or more cells. A component of the cell theory is that the cell is the basic unit of life. And also, a component of the cell theory is that all new cells arise from existing cells. And for the human body, it is made up of more than 50 million microscopic cells. And typically, cell is 0.02 millimeter across about 1,000 would fit on this full stop. And also, there are at least 200 kinds of cells in the body with different sizes, shapes, and functions. And lastly, every second, more than 2 million new red blood cells for the blood are made by the bone marrow. And this is the illustration and function of the cell theory. So first, all living organisms are made of the cells. So, for example, is the snake. Snakes is also a living organism. It means that snake is also made up of cells. Second, cells are the basic unit of life. Cells serve as the starting point to produce life because without cells, there is no life to produce or exist. And third, cells arise from pre-existing cells. So, it means in some aspects that cells can also produce another cells. And fourth, hereditary information is passed from the cells. And for this explanation, it means the cell transmit from one generation to the next through the organism reproductive cells. Therefore, the properties and function of the cells are determined almost entirely by the proteins that it is able to make. And for number 5, all cells have the basic chemical composition. So it means all the cells have the same compositions. For example, is the water. Water is the most abundant substance in the cells. And based on the hypothesis that water has extraterrestrial origin and has a formation of water condensations from the primary atmosphere, and it can also release gases from the Earth's interior. And also, number 6, energy flow occurs within cells. It means this process is known as the cellular respiration, which occurs in the mitochondria of each cell. If photosynthesis is in autotrophs and the cellular respiration in heterotrophs, then they work together to store and release energy in living organisms. Therefore, the reactants of one process and the product of are the product of the others. And we go on for the optical device used for discovering the cells. So when it comes to optical device, microscope is serve as the optical device used for discovering the cells. The microscopes we use today are far more complex than those used in the 1600s by Antony van Leeuwenhoek, a Dutch shopkeeper who had great skills in crafting lenses. Despite the limitation of his now ancient lenses, van Leeuwenhoek observed the movements of protista. Protista means a type of a single-cell organisms, and sperm, which he collective term animalcules. And for 1665 publication called Micrographia, it is the experimental scientist Robert Hooke coined the term cell for the box-like structures, and he observes when viewing for tissues through a lens. And for 1670s, van Leeuwenhoek discovered bacteria and protozoa. Later advances in lenses, microscope constructions and staining techniques enable other scientists to see some components inside cells. So in discovering the optical device, Antony van Leeuwenhoek and Robert Hooke is served as the proponent based on their respective discoveries. So we go on for the modern cell theory. The generally accepted portion of the modern cell theory are as follows. First, the cell is the fundamental unit of structures and function in living cells. Second, all organisms are made up of one or more cells. And third, cells arise from other cells through cellular division. And for the expanded version of the cell theory can also include that cells carry genetic material passed to daughter cells during cellular division. Then, all cells are essentially the same in chemical compositions. And lastly, the energy flow or the metabolism and biochemistry occurs within the cells. So, let's proceed for the part of cells. In the cells, we have here the nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, cytoplasm, cell membrane, DNA, lysosome, ribosome, mitochondrion or the mitochondria, and the Golgi apparatus or Golgi bodies. For its function, cell membrane, it is outer layer controlling what comes into and goes out of the cells. And for the mitochondrion or the mitochondria, it is a part that breaks down glucose sugar to release its stored chemical energy which powers the cells to process. And for ribosomes, it is like a tiny factories making new substances, especially proteins, which are the cell's main structural parts or building bricks. Next is the lysosome. Lysosome is the part of a cell that means that breaking up any unwanted materials. And next is the Golgi body or the Golgi apparatus. This part is a cell is dispatch century where chemicals are bagged up inside the tiny membranes to send where they are needed. And for the nucleus, it is the cell control century that's sending out instruction via a chemical called messenger RNA whenever a new chemical is needed. And for cytoplasm, cytoplasm is a thick solution that fills each cell and it enclosed by the cell membrane. It is mainly composed of water, salt, and proteins. In eukaryotic cells, the cytoplasm includes all of the material inside the cells and outside of the nucleus. Next, for the DNA, or its full name is deoxyribonucleic acid, a self-replicating material which is present in nearly all living organisms as the main constituents of chromosomes, and it is the carrier of the genetic informations. And last is the endoplasmic reticulum or ER. It is a continuous membrane system that forms a series of flattened sacs within the cytoplasms of eukaryotic cells and serve multiple functions, being important particularly in the synthesis, folding, modifications, and transport of proteins. Therefore, the cell's outside layer is the cell's or plasma membrane. Inside the cell, many tiny organelles, or the cells with specialized functions, float in the jelly-like cytoplasm. Most of cells do not live for long. They wear out and die naturally at the rate of 5 million every second. However, specialized types of cells called stem cells. It is always dividing to produce new cells that replace the old ones. So let's proceed for the four main types of cells, which is first, the epithelial cells. These cells are tightly attached to one another. And for the nerve cells, these cells are specialized for communications. For the muscle cells, these cells are specialized for construction or contraction. And the last is the connective tissue cells, and these cells provide structural strength to the body and also defend against foreign invaders like bacteria. The cells, from Latin cella meaning small room, it is the basic structural, functional, and biological unit of all known organisms. Cells are the smallest unit of life, and hence are often referred to as the building blocks of life. And the study of cells is called cell biology, cellular biology, or the cytology. There are two main types of cells, which is called as the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. For prokaryotic cells, the first form of the life on Earth, characterized by having vital biological processes, including cell signaling. So, prokaryotic cells, it includes archaea and bacteria, and that is lack a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. And the DNA of a prokaryotic cells consists of a single cellular chromosomes, and that is the in direct contact with the cytoplasm. And for eukaryotic cells, these cells are about 15 times wider than a typical prokaryote and can be as much as 1,000 times greater in volume. Because eukaryotes include plants, animals, fungi, slime, molds, protozoa, and algae that has a presence of bound organelles in which specific activities take place, and but the most important among these is a cell nucleus, an organelle that houses the cell DNA. Therefore, this nucleus gives the eukaryote its name, which means the true kernel or nucleus. Next, this is in this illustration, we see the comparison of features for eukaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So, for the typical organism, prokaryotes has has only bacteria and archaea, and for the eukaryotes, we have here the protists, fungi, plants, and animals. And for the typical size, prokaryote has 1 to 5 diameter, and for eukaryotes, 10 to 100 diameter. And for the type of nucleus, prokaryote has nucleoid region or nu through nucleus. So prokaryote has no nucleus. And for eukaryotes, through nucleus with double membrane. For DNA, prokaryote has cellular DNA, and while the eukaryotes has linear molecules or chromosome with histone proteins. When it comes to RNA or protein synthesis, the prokaryote has coupled in the cytoplasms, and for the eukaryotes, RNA synthesis in the nucleus, protein synthesis in the cytoplasms. That's the advantage of eukaryotes to prokaryotes. And when it comes to ribosomes, the prokaryote has 50 and 30 ribosomes, while the eukaryote has 60 and 40 ribosomes. And first, the cytoplasmic structure, prokaryote has very few structure because prokaryote has no nucleus and bound organelles. But the eukaryote has a highly structured by the endomembranes and a cytoskeleton. When it comes to cell movement, prokaryote has the flagella made of the flagellum only. And for the eukaryotes, there is a flagella and cilia containing microtubules, lamellipodia, and filopodia containing actin. And for the mitochondria, prokaryote has none because there is no nucleus exist or produced, while the eukaryotes has 1 to several thousands. The same for the chloroplast. Prokaryote has none, and the eukaryote has in algae in plants. Because we see the chloroplasts inside the living organism, which is in the algae in the plants only. And for the organization, the prokaryote has usually single cells, while the eukaryotes, single cells, colonies, higher multicellular organisms with specialized cells. That's the advantage of eukaryotes. And for the cell division, the prokaryote has only binary fission or the simple divisions, but the eukaryotes has a mitosis, division or the budding, and has also a meiosis. And for the chromosomes, prokaryote has also single chromosomes, while the eukaryotes has more than 1 chromosomes. Lastly, for the membranes, prokaryotes has cell membrane, but eukaryote has the cell membrane and in additional for the membrane-bound organelles. And that's the difference between the prokaryote and eukaryotic cells. Next, we have here the sizes of cells. I only stated the smallest cells of the human body and the largest cells in the human body. So among the smallest cells in the human body, red blood cells is the smallest cells, which are only 0.007 millimeter across, while among the largest cells in the body of the human or the living organisms are the giant muscle cells or fibers, which is 0.1 millimeter wide and up to 50 millimeter long. And when it comes for the cell life cycle or the lifespan of the cells, we have here the epithelial cells. It is referred for the inside of the cheeks, which is the lifespan is 10 hours only. For the epidermal scales, epidermal cells, that is referred to the skin surface. We have here the lifespan in about 4 weeks only. And the red blood cells, we have here a 3 months cycle. Liver cells, 18-month lifespan. Bone cells has 10 years, but the longest lifespan of the cell is called the nerve cells in brain, which has a lifespan about 50 years above. And that is the different lifespan of the cells in the human body. So that's all. Thank you and God bless.